Ryan,
Tony, and Crystal.
We can't guarantee that you're gonna look great, but if you wanna stay in shape, well, you better hit the GymWits.
That's right, man. Tell 'em.
welcome to the GymWits podcast. I'm Ryan George.
I'm Justin Guild, aka Chef Sonic.
And I'm Tony Marinucci, aka Tips with Tony, a registered dietitian.
And we are the GymWits. So I'm in quarantine mode again. I mean, not that we all aren't, but I came from California, and as you guys probably know, like New York is very strict when it comes to traveling from states that have high numbers. And so like we had to fill out this form and share our address and phone number, and I've already been contacted by someone to say, make sure you're staying in your apartment. If you can't distance from people in your home, we'll even get you a hotel room. So they're being pretty serious about making sure that you're not
Depends what hotel room.
yeah, who knows? I do know. I guess I heard
Four
this.
Seasons.
yeah, right. It's like I'd rather be home. I got to deal with my dogs. Too much to do. It would be nice. But I think I'm good staying at home and just trying to quarantine and hopefully I didn't catch anything, because like I flew American, and they are not concerned with not too concerned with safety. Everybody has to wear a mask, but it was a packed flight, and a little concerning.
That's real concerning. Did you also concerning? Did you hear about those the like all the airplanes that had like engine failures and things like that, because they I don't quote me on the exact science of what happened to the airplanes, but basically because they were shut away in a in a hangar for long periods of time without being used, like the engines were shutting down, or like something was happening mechanically that made things really dangerous. And I think some of them happened in flight. No one was hurt, but it could have been catastrophic. So and they're just realizing now, oh, wait a minute, if planes sit for months on end without being used, there's problems with that. So good time to figure it out right while it's in the air.
Yeah. Did not hear about that.
That sounds horrifying.
It's good that you heard about it after you took the flight, right?
Yeah. No, the flight itself was fine. It was just like, it was just being on a plane with a bunch of people.
Yeah, of course.
And it's like, don't need to be sitting next to so many people. But I get that the airline industry is struggling, but I think they also had years and years of record profits. So it's like, you got to suck it up a little bit and deal keep people safe.
Yeah,
but
of course.
I made it. I don't think I'm sick. I've been back for about a week. So hopefully I didn't catch anything. How have you guys been?
Good.
Yeah.
Things are good.
Yeah, things are pretty good. I had a nice COVID moment where I stepped on the scale and I weighed 202 pounds, which is the most I've ever weighed. Right. So like I haven't been eating terrible, but I just haven't been active, and probably have been eating a little more than I need to. And
you've also been traveling a lot, like back and forth from there to New York and New Jersey. And
so now I'm down in Nashville. Actually started really sort of eating less and eating pretty healthy, and actually been very good. And I've already dropped a few. I could see the difference already, just because that's just what happens when you get back to homeostasis. But and I started doing some exercise again. My body is it's just tough. Like when you're sort of stuck somewhere, you haven't been exercising and eating great. But I've kicked it up a notch now, so I'm doing pretty good.
A little intention setting goes a really long way. Of course, you have to follow through with the intention, but the littlest things make a big difference. So that's great that you're doing something about it.
Yeah, it's happening. I'll get back to normal once life is more normal. So
don't wait for that. That is the please no, everybody listening. There's no normal coming. Stop waiting for normal to happen.
Let me
create your new normal.
No, sorry. Let me reiterate that. I don't mean like when COVID and everything is done. I mean when I'm in a sort of in a space where I can just prepare my own food and
Mm-hmm.
not travel and not be just crazy the whole time. So
Yeah.
it wasn't about like, no, like normal. I mean, like now is normal because I'm in my space. I can prepare my own
Right.
food. I have time. I can exercise. I can do all the things I need to do. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, I
I just wanted
100%
to
agree.
clarify. Yeah, no,
Yes, very
but
important.
definitely too, but then also too to recognize like you were in a transitional phase, and so to it's unrealistic to make be able to prioritize your nutrition and your fitness and
I could have done better
everything.
though.
I mean, maybe looking back now you can see that, but at the same time there is a time and place for everything,
Yeah.
and so you
So
just
you
need
got to
to
make the most of it now that
yeah.
it's a little more steady. Now I could now make the most of this time, instead of just saying, oh, well, we'll find an excuse not to.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. I've been doing well with the intermittent fasting. Like I've been
Oh,
very
wow.
strict with it, but I think I talked about it last time that I'd started doing it. And what I found is, so if I do, it's just a 16-hour fast. Really, it's like it's not
Not
that
hard at
bad.
all.
But what I've found is that, so I finish eating at 8, so I do like 12 to 8. The hardest time for me is actually at 10 p.m. So 2 hours after I'm done with my last meal is actually the hardest because I'm so used to the habit of eating. But then by the time I get to the next morning, I could almost go past, like I'm not even think. Sometimes I have to remind myself, oh, it's noon, I got to eat.
Mm.
And so that's been much easier. And I definitely find like I feel a lot better when I'm doing it, just like physically, because I tend to overeat like when I like in if I'm just not doing anything, I tend to kind of not overeat, but compulsively eat. Like if I'm just like, I mean, we're not doing this as much because I don't go into the city as much, but if I'm waiting around for
Absolutely.
something, I might just grab
Of course.
something, or at night, I'll just grab like a midnight snack or whatever. And so I find that the benefit of it, like, there's varying ideas on, as Tony can probably speak to more on whether or not how effective intermittent fasting is. But I definitely find for me, it helps with my compulsive eating. Um, and I feel less, because the window is so small for me to eat, I feel less inclined to eat things that are not good for me,
Sure.
because when I do make choices, like I'm full. And then again, and then it's like, oh crap, I got to eat dinner. It's 8 o'clock. And so I'm not too hungry for whatever reason. When I get to my noon meal, I'm not so ravenous that I'm going to pig out. But then when I get to my last meal, I'm not super hungry. So I just make better choices. So I've just found it's done a good job for me of regulating. So whatever, regardless of the science and how effective it is, at increasing your metabolism or dealing with insulin levels or whatever, like I just find it's for personally, it's helped me control my kind of bad habits.
Yep, that's a big part of it. I've been doing the same thing, about basically 1 to 8, 1 to 9. So a similar thing. It works. Ryan, you think you could push it till 1 o'clock and push your hour? You're just not comfortable doing that.
I mean, I probably could, but I don't see
You
a
don't see a
major
in it.
benefit
Okay.
in doing that. Because the two main issues I'm having. So the main issues I'm having, I would say, with it, and they're not even really issues, but for me, the problem is I have to then regulate my food, because I'm finding, okay, I'm definitely getting enough calories because I'm not hungry. I don't feel like I'm depriving myself throughout but I find that I also need to be careful of the timing. So like if I eat my last meal because this happened a couple times where I had a meal, like I had dinner at like 6:30, and I totally forgot that I was doing intermittent fasting. And then by like 10:30 that night, I was really hungry because now and I'm like, well, I can't eat now. It's past 8. So I find that I have to eat that meal at 8 o'clock. That will keep me over for the next day, until the next day. So I have to have that meal. But then if I start eating too late, it's going to mess with I'm not going to be hungry late, to have a decent meal for dinner. So I just have to be very careful about, like, I eat, I have breakfast at noon. I'll have like lunch at, 2 or 3, and then I'll have my dinner at 8 o'clock or around, thereabouts. And then if I regulate that, it seems to control my hunger. But if I don't keep that regulated, that's where I run into problems.
Whatever works, right?
Yeah. So yeah, whatever. So you were texting us all week, your grocery shopping. Why don't you tell us about that,
So
Justin?
nothing that we haven't covered before, but I found something very interesting. That I was shopping and for groceries, and I needed to pick up a few things, and I was like, where is it? I was like, oh, that's right, they would probably put this in the special part of the grocery store. Now granted, for some people that have smaller grocery stores, this section isn't going to exist. But in very large grocery stores, such as the Kroger that I go to, they're going to have sections like this. So probably not as much in cities where the places are smaller, especially in New York City. But if you live in the suburbs or near shopping centers that have these mega supermarkets, then they're going to have these sections. And not to mention the fact that there's sometimes you might just find these in stores that are sort of health food store type places. So I picked up a couple things, and I was looking at the items that they were selling. um First off, is that they were selling lots of junk food, right? Chips and cookies and cake type things that were more expensive than the cheaper brands found in like the junk food aisle. Um, but they were the same nutritional value. It's They're cookies the same way, and or chips or cake or whatever it is, and had fancier packaging, and maybe they have slightly less preservatives or something like that. But they're sort of being branded as, they're in the sort of green or organic or healthier section. So one might believe that these are healthier than eating the chips or the cookies that are in the regular part of the store. But they're, well, Tony will speak to that. And then there's one more thing. They sold well, actually a bunch of things, but I'll keep it small. So they were selling lots of standard grocery items like milk or yogurt. And if you look at the ingredients, the ingredients in the milk was milk. And if you went to the other part of the store, the ingredients in the milk there was milk, or yogurt was milk. And so they were selling the same product, only like you have what's the what's like a brand of a dairy brand that is super expensive. I guess, and I don't want to make this a discussion about organic or not, or GMO, or that's not the point of
Mhm.
this. That's a separate discussion. But I forgot the name of it, but it's the same. The same. There was lots of fancier brands, and I looked at the ingredients, and they were the same ingredients, and some of them weren't even organic.
Mhm.
So only one of the yogurts, or the Greek yogurt that they were selling, was $6 for whatever the size was, and then in the other part of the store, the same ingredients was $3.
Mhm.
So, and but one is made to look healthier, but I mean, really, is there that much of a difference? All right, I'll let you. And there's tons of other stuff, and I know there are some healthy items. That's where you could find tofu, and if you do want organic stuff, that's probably where it's going to be. Although, one more thing, they have organic food or non-GMO food in the regular parts of the supermarket as well, with the not as healthy brands that are organic, and not some of the regular brands sell organic or natural, like peanut butter, for instance. So, all right, Tony, you can speak to this.
Yeah, so I feel like we've definitely have covered this in previous podcasts. I think that the halo effect, I think we did a whole podcast
Yes,
about
yes,
that, which was really great. And then the
that's it.
more recent one, we talked about just like all these like buzzwords and terms and stuff. Um, so for those who don't know, I was a supermarket registered dietitian for 4 years. So I know the supermarket very, very well. And I know those aisles that Justin's talking about, where they are natural, gluten-free, organic. And so if you are someone who has celiac disease and you're looking for something that's gluten-free, it's actually a really great place to go because it's pretty much streamlined. Or if you're someone who prefers to purchase organic, it's also a nice place to go. But in general, that does not mean the food is healthier. And very often, yes, Justin, you're right. It is a marketing thing. So they just charge more. And some people prefer that because they like certain brands. Other people might just be falling for false advertisement. But unfortunately, it is very common that you will find very similar products in two separate aisles, and one's marketed as healthier and the other one is not. And so, therefore, they are double the price. So, when I used to work in a supermarket, although I would go down that aisle because there are some things that I could find, like popcorn, for example, you could also find popcorn in another aisle and some that are just as healthy, right? So, I would find I would basically not just go down that aisle. I would show people products from all over based off what their budget was, based off what their preferences were. And yeah, you have to really be able to read between the lines and really look through to justify higher price like foods that are certified organic. They do have to pay for that stamp and to do it for that processing. So that's why they can justify charging a little bit more. And then if something has less preservatives, then it's going to spoil faster. So therefore, they can charge a little bit more for that. But in general, like if it is something like chips or cookies, we're not, even whether it's like a natural, gluten-free, organic, or even healthier option. Those are still foods we want to be having in moderate amounts. And we really want to be having a bulk of our items coming from those whole foods that are in the outer perimeters of the grocery store, not really down those aisles. So it's really, to me, it's like irrelevant where you choose to shop. I rather you have more money in your pocket so that you can spend it on other things. That's what I always teach people.
So well said. And I know Ryan, you have a study, but I'm going to mention a study, and it's sort of, I'm going to mention it indirectly because I heard it on a podcast. I heard, and I'll quote it. I heard it on the podcast called Business Wars, so I'm not stealing it. And I believe it was a study done by General Mills, and they were looking at as the 2000s continue, as we got further into the 2000s, they noticed that alternative brand cereals were becoming more and more popular, and that a lot of cereals the sugary cereals were in decline, but not 100%. Right? They actually found out that one of their cereals, Trix, was selling at an all-time high, or not at all, but like a little bit, maybe at an all-time high, or very, it was still was selling very well. And they were like, wait, what's going on here? And they did, and through market research, they determined that a lot of the people that were purchasing healthier foods and having healthier options, like something like a parfait for breakfast, or eating vegan stuff at one part of the day, at night would often have something like Trix as a treat for themselves. And they were finding out it was adults that were doing this. So that they're finding that the same people that were purchasing so-called healthier options were also purchasing the not healthy options. And it was the same demographic of people. And they found that consumers are very fickle that way. And I found that to be a fascinating statistic that they came up with.
Yeah, I think that also does screw people up a little bit, because they'll, even if they buy like a healthier item, they don't realize that it's to replace the less healthy one. And instead it's just they're adding more to it. So it's not going to like, it's still going to impact their health in a better way. But really, realistically, it needs to be more replaced rather than just added in.
Yeah.
I
just thought it was
and that's a good point with the
the
cereal in that aisle that we were talking about, like the natural, gluten-free, organic aisle. There's like a lot of like advertised healthier cereals, but they still have like a lot of sugar, and it's like, so they're made with whole grains, but they have a lot of sugar.
Sure.
So it's like, yeah, you're getting a little fiber, that's great, but it's really not gonna, you're still probably gonna have that sugar high and that crash later, and it's not going to be good for you. And like, it's not going to be as filling as just a plain oats that you add like fresh berries to, and some nut butters and stuff like that.
Sure.
I just wonder why Trix. Like, I don't. Trix was never my favorite cereal.
Yeah,
like,
agreed.
Why not like Captain Crunch or
Frosted Flakes,
Lucky Charms, Frosted Flakes, Apple Jacks.
Yeah.
But Trix,
I think that was just randomly, and I hope I got the cereal right.
Cinnamon Chex, guys, just saying.
I never loved cereal.
I loved cereal as a kid.
Oh, you like cereal? No, my favorite. I just never eat it. The only cereal that I have, the cold cereal that I keep in the house, is unsweetened shredded wheat. So I'll eat that.
That's good for you, though.
I'll eat that on occasion, and I'll add a little sugar to it. But that's generally what I keep if I have anything. So
yeah. All right. So speaking of studies, so we do have an interesting study. So I will say, take this with a humongous grain of salt, for a number of reasons, which I'll explain. But so it comes out of the University of Bath, and basically it's looking at like occasional overindulgence and what kind of effect it has on the body. So the first thing I'll say is there really haven't been a lot of studies on this, like to see, what effect does like the quote cheat meal have, on the body, or kind of that, taking that, that bad meal. So, kind of keep this in mind. There's not many studies. This particular study was done healthy men between the ages of 22 and 37. So again, huge grain of salt, because that's probably, not going to be a significant part of the demographic listening to this, or that may be, impacted by it. So just kind of right off the bat, lots of grains of salt. What they were looking at though was basically giving, so they wanted to see, like, if you do a humongous intake of calories, um, what effect does it have on you immediately after? So again, it's very limited. We're not looking at long-term effects. We're not looking at things dealing with maybe, necessarily dealing with like motivation and maybe relapsing, if you are, eating better. But whatever the case is, they had an average of 3,000 calories in the meal. So it would be the equivalent to 1.5 pizza pies. Some had a little more, some had a little less, but that came out to the average, that in this meal, they had 3,000 calories. So what they found was that immediately after the meal, their blood glucose was no higher than usual. Again, immediately after, they found insulin in the blood was higher than normal, but not that much. They also found that blood lipids were slightly higher than usual. What they did find was that the hormones released, by the gut to stimulate insulin secretion and feelings of fullness did increase, fairly significantly. And then the other finding was that kind of 4 hours after eating, they were still full with no desire for sweets, which they actually found, researchers found that part surprising, because even if you're full, like the reward center of the brain should have been kind of lit up, and so you should want more food. But I think from experience, whenever I have done, like when we go to the all you can eat
Yeah.
steakhouse, I'm certainly not hungry for 4 to 8 hours after eating that
Sure,
much
sure.
food. But yeah, again, I just found it kind of interesting. I thought maybe Tony, you might have something to say, to add to that or not. But I just thought it was interesting about that, that I actually thought it was more interesting that we really don't know a lot about kind of the effects of the cheat meal, or that kind of massive
But what
overindulgence.
is occasionally? What do you mean by that?
Oh well, no, so again, there's nothing here.
Yeah.
Like, and that was more the title. So and that, that's what it's looking at. So again, this is something that really wasn't repeated. They weren't looking at, how the, do you do it every week? Do you do it every month? So it's very little included here. It was more like, what happens after this one meal? How does the
Well,
body
if
react?
anything, I think it just goes to show that one meal doesn't make or break the diet. So, which is why we need to, which is why people, unfortunately, what they do, I mean, this might be helpful for people, because usually what they do think is like, oh, I screwed up. I already overweight ate. I may as well keep eating, or I may as well, quote unquote, start tomorrow, but they never start tomorrow. And then it just continues to be unhealthy habits. But it really depends on like the mindset behind that person
Yeah.
consuming that meal, and like what their thought process is. I recently have, I mean, I've shifted a lot. A lot of the people I work with now struggle with binge eating. So I would never support something like encouraging someone to actually do that when we're trying to get them away from that. But if anything, I hope it just shows to people to realize, like, okay, if it happens, it happens, just move on. Because obviously your blood sugars and all that, although it's affected, it's actually going to dramatically change or impact your health. But if you repeat that over time, then likely it's going to impact not just your physical health, but your mental health as well.
Yeah.
So I have a couple questions. I don't know if they mentioned anything. First off, did they mention what the cheat, what the, oh, or first, and the, well, first off, before I have actually, it's a little confusing with the concept of a cheat meal and then overindulgence. I see them as two
Yeah.
different things. Like one, you could say, all
Right.
right, I'm gonna have my favorite meal. I'm gonna have a bacon cheeseburger and fries, and that's gonna be my quote unquote cheat meal, but it's still gonna be my meal, and that's not gonna equal 3,000 calories, right? Maybe if you, oh,
Oh,
sorry, I just got something.
me too. Running out of time. Remove the 40-minute. Okay, thanks, Zoom.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Zoom.
I pay for Zoom, so we should
Yeah,
never
yeah,
have a
yeah, yeah,
time limit.
yeah. So,
Sorry.
I mean, so just having a quote unquote normal cheat meal
And I
doesn't
hate
sound
that
like,
word cheat
I
so
hate
bad.
it
I hate
too.
it
It's just,
so much. It's
I,
like
I
it's
don't
not.
see that as,
It's
yeah. I
yeah.
also don't see that as overindulgence. Like that was you ate a less healthy meal, but you're not necessarily overindulging.
Right.
Overindulging, I see as real is like eating 3,000 calories is for most people is not easy. But all right, that's the point of the study, regardless. Then the second part to it is I'm just wondering, did it mention what the meal consisted of? Because you
I think it was
oh
pizza,
it,
just lots and
it
lots
was
of
lots
So
of
pizza.
a
pizza.
pie
Yeah.
and a half of pizza.
Yeah.
Okay, so well, look, that would I get because I was wondering, if it was
I mean,
really carb heavy,
it
but it's
would
got
feel like
fat in there.
crap.
Yeah, I can't imagine you feeling very well because you mentioned the Brazilian steakhouse that would we would go to, but you're eating a lot of
Yeah.
fat there, and protein is why you're probably not hungry. But if it was a meal that was stacked with carbohydrates 4 hours later, who knows how you might feel. So,
Hmm.
but if it was pizza, I guess there's a lot of cheese. Ugh, man, you know,
That
I made the
sounds
mistake of eating a pie and a half.
terrible.
I don't feel good. It
That
also depends what
sounds
type of
like
pie.
a big stomach
Yeah.
ache
Depends
and
how good the pizza is too.
fatigue
If
and
it's like DeFaris
the
pizza, then it's way different than like saying Domino's or something like that.
my face, the sodium, the puffy face,
Ugh,
my
yeah,
feet
yeah,
would
yeah.
be swollen, my hands, everything.
It's a lot of pizza. Jeez.
Just does not sound enjoyable.
Yeah. All right. So the main thing we're going to talk about today was some of the benefits of exercising with the family. And actually, like for me, I have a presentation for work, and this was part of it. And I thought, this would be a good topic to just talk about. Kind of, we're in a situation now where a lot of us are home all day with the family all day, and if anything, this is of all the many negative aspects of it, one positive is you are spending time with the family. No, it can be positive or negative depending on how you look at it, but incorporating fitness and exercise with the family kind of unit could bring along a lot of benefits that if you're not already taking advantage of it, I would definitely encourage you to if you are at home with the family. um, so you know there are a few things. So I want to talk about some of the benefits of it, maybe how to go about it, and some ideas on things you might be able to to do with the family. So, one really good benefit I think of exercising as a group is it helps to model good behavior. So I think for a lot of our generation, I think we're although we've talked about this before, that we see exercise as kind of it's seen as its own. I don't even know how to describe it, but like it's not seen as something that just is incorporated into part of your life. It's just something you do, but it's like almost like a job that you have to get it. You have to do it. You have to achieve it. You have to work towards it. And so by starting kids young as just exercise being just a part of their routine, I think it helps to model that as a healthy thing that you just do. It's not that crap, I have to get to the gym. It's just it's part of my life. It's what I do. And it comes in so many forms. So it can be in the gym, it can be outdoors, it can be active, doing it through various activities. But just I think one of the benefits of doing it with the family and with the kids is that they see the proper behavior, proper approach to exercise, and that there's not a love-hate relationship with it, but more like this is just something we do. It's part of my life, and then you can take it wherever you want. If you see exercise as just it's something that's an aspect of my life that I have, it's like eating, and then you just make the decisions on what foods to eat. It's the same thing with exercise. Like, you just exercise as part of your life. You decide what form it will take, but that it's just part of your life.
Just sorry
And
to
another,
just
yeah,
to chime in on that.
no, no,
It was just it's just funny how um when we were in junior high school and high school, even into college, that there was especially in high school, I felt that there was a lot of cynicism towards exercise, right? That I don't
yeah,
know if you experienced the same thing,
yeah,
but I would tell people, oh, I'm going to the gym or something like that, and they would sort of like snicker at it, be like, you're going to the gym? Why would you want to
yeah,
waste your time doing that? And
yeah,
even then, I had this, because we always played sports and we were into that culture, and I just even at that young age, I felt like this is a good thing to do long term. And it's like, oh, it's
yeah.
easy for you now when you're 16, and your metabolism, and you can eat anything and you'll be fine, and you won't gain a pound. But wait, just you wait. So I just knew that
Yeah.
it would be a you know we had that belief, and plus we enjoyed it. But I don't know if you guys ever experienced that cynicism, and I get and where it
Yeah.
comes from, and it sort of ties in with if you had grown
Well,
up with it being a good thing, a normal thing, then maybe people wouldn't have had that.
I think the thing with exercise, and what I was trying to describe or explain earlier is it's usually looked at as a means to an
Yeah.
end, which it is. So it's always kind of a means to an end to staying healthy. But I think that when we think about it, we're always thinking about it as I have a goal. Like I've got to, I have to, I'm exercising because I need to reach a certain goal physically. And the more we can kind of uncouple that or decouple it, the better. Because I think it's just I exercise because it's good for my
Yeah.
health, and I think that at
It's
a
a good enough
baseline,
goal.
exercise should just be a part of your life as a baseline because we live lives that are fairly sedentary
Yeah.
and we don't just the nature of our lives do not have us generally active enough, and so we need to exercise for that. And so the more we think about exercise as it's baseline always there, and then if I have a goal, I can then steer it in a different direction. Maybe I do more weight training or I do more cardio or I'm playing sports, so you can play around with how you do it, but that as a baseline it's always there. And I think that's one important thing to teach young kids, is that it's just part of life. And the problem with the past when we were young is I think most people saw it as, oh well, what, you want to look like a
Yeah.
bodybuilder or
Yeah.
you're training for something. It was always like, if you're exercising for something rather than just exercising because I just want to stay healthy. And so I think
Sure.
it's important to teach kids early that exercise is a part of life. It's not you know it's not always going to be a direct means to an end.
Sure.
It's just there.
Yeah, I feel like growing up, it's either you played sports, you danced, or you didn't move your body, you didn't exercise, you
Yeah.
were maybe in theater, or you know what I mean? Like it wasn't
Yeah.
ever taught to just exercise. It was like just if you played sports, then you exercised, and it was like
Yeah.
in season.
Yeah, exactly. And then actually, so then kind of staying on that, as far as what kid, if you either for kids, it's like you either play sports, dance, or you're not. And generally they're on their screens. And so I think a
Hmm.
really good, important part of exercising, with the family is getting them off the screens. And I think it's important that when you're exercising, if you're going to do it, and this kind of goes a little bit towards like the, how to plan it, it should be screen free. So, you want to keep the kids away from the screens. There's too much time on it, especially now where we have to quarantine and shelter in place. And so there's really limited opportunities for kids to get outside as it is and interact with people. So especially with this, it kind of keeps them a little bit away from the screens, which, seem to be such a massive part of their lives.
So you don't like the
Um,
idea of like the family gathering around the like the Roku and slipping on an exercise video or some fun and everyone doing it together.
Yeah, no, don't do. Yes, sure. In that way, you can. Fine. So another benefit is it just kind of gives you common ground to talk about things. If you think about, every family is different. I know families where the parents and kids are super close and can talk about anything, and I know families where they're not very close at all and have very little to talk about. But at a minimum, again, it gives you some common ground. Something to talk about, whether it's the type of exercise you're doing, how well you're doing, things you can do better, changes, how you feel. It does give you some kind of common ground so that everybody can kind of talk about it. And then kind of adding, kind of attached to that is just bonding. It's great bonding time. So again, every family is different, but if you do find that you have a hard time really connecting with your kids or bonding with your kids, exercise is a great way to do it, because you're all doing it. You releases the endorphins. It helps with mood. It helps with emotional well-being, and so it will help the kids to open up because again you have some kind of a common ground. So it's really great for
It'll
that.
also help them fall asleep at night.
That's that's a great benefit.
Like kids
um
will stay up forever and ever and ever unless you make them
yeah,
tired.
Just an
yeah,
interesting sort of thing to piggyback off of that. I feel that when I was a kid, we would see parents and their kids, generally a dad, but sometimes a mom too, throwing a ball with their son or daughter.
yeah,
In the park, and I felt like as I got older and I started seeing a lot less of that, probably because
yeah,
of just the lifestyle change, phone, your screens, phones, and everything. But during the Cove, I've noticed that a lot more parents have been out with their kids doing stuff like throwing a ball in the park because it's one of the few things that people could do. They could go to the park. So I actually started seeing a lot more of you could tell that the parents were walking to and from the park with doing some sort of exercise with their kid. And I found that interesting and maybe it was just my perspective on it, but I noticed it a lot more when I was in New York. And and maybe it's just a spike. And when people go back to work and whatnot, you're going to see less of it again. But I just found that
yeah,
interesting that I started noticing more
yeah.
of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed it as well. I see a lot of people in the park, kicking soccer balls around with their
Yep.
kids, and yeah, definitely is one of the few good things about the pandemic.
My concern
I
is
guess.
when the weather's not good anymore, though.
Very
Yeah,
true.
that's a problem. Well, so that's the thing is that as far as this is concerned, you can always do things indoors. There are options, but yeah, it's a little bit hard. You're limited in the activities when the weather does change. Although maybe not. You buy some skates if you're in a really cold area, or you do some cold weather activities. But but there's always something to do. So another thing it does, especially so if you do have kids that don't play sports, I think one of the benefits of sports is you really learn teamwork and you learn how to operate as a team. You learn how to work with other people. You learn how to problem solve. And so depending on the activity or what you do, if you're exercising as a family, I think it does teach teamwork and kind of teaches people to collaborate and work together. So especially with kids that are not, as active in playing sports, it's a great way to develop that in kids. um and then and then these last, so again, kind of work together, but as I mentioned earlier, it helps with emotional well-being and helps with managing stress. It helps with self-esteem. So these are all kind of psychological benefits to kids exercising and then working together as a family, especially if you're positive and encouraging. And also as a side benefit, it also helps with academic performance. So there are plenty of studies showing that exercise can help with academic performance in kids. So and with developing cognitive capacity, and especially with the developing brain, it's really beneficial. So again, especially if you have kids that are not as active, it's a great thing to do. And I think exercising as a family has loads of benefits. So these are kind of some of the the main ones. Anything that you guys can think of, any benefits that I didn't touch on?
Self-esteem.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, just oh, and it's surprising in you that I don't even know if you mentioned it, but just being in being better physically health, in better physical health. Like that seems like you didn't
Yeah.
even mention that part, but
Well, yeah, but
it's like it does.
that-
And just because you're a kid doesn't mean you can't be in better shape, right?
yeah,
Yeah, well, and then like kind of going off of that, like the sooner you start to develop like your muscle mass and you start to actually strengthen your muscle mass, like the bigger the more like you're going to just have stronger
Absolutely.
muscles. Like the sooner you start working them, the better it is.
Yep. Yep.
Basically.
So okay, I don't know if you were going to get to this or not, but all right, let's give a typical scenario right now. You can't, right, maybe there is no, maybe you're in a situation, there is no park, you can't go outside, or maybe it's cold outside, the cove is still going on, you have 2 5-year-olds or in the house, and you have basically, you don't have many, maybe you have a tiny outdoor area, or maybe you have some stairs. Like how do you get, what are you going to do? Like what's
All right,
your
so
fun little
let's hold
exercise
off
game?
that
Okay,
for a
okay.
minute. Hold
All
off
right.
of that for that.
I
Yeah.
knew you were going to get
Yeah.
to it.
So first thing is like, if you're, if to incorporate the family, a couple, things to kind of think about. If you're gonna, if you want to get the family involved, especially if you haven't, is try to find something that's convenient for everybody. So it's got to be, a time when the kids are, obviously are home. If they've got like, if they meet up with their friends to play video games at 10 o'clock, you don't necessarily want to pull them away from that. You want to find something that is convenient for everybody, because you want them to enjoy doing it.
Sure.
And you don't want them to kind of resent you for bringing them in. You want to try to give them some time to mentally prepare for it. So you don't want to just walk up and say, all right, we're all exercising. Give them a little bit of time. Say, tomorrow at this time, we're going to all get together and exercise. Make it fun and enjoyable. So, especially early on, you don't want it, you don't want to get kids that haven't exercised and just start throwing them into doing like push-ups and burpees and everything. Like, and if you do, you want, it's got to be done in a way that's fun and engaging for them. If you just throw them into, it being really hard, arduous work before they're ready for it, then it might defeat the purpose of starting with it. Try to have goals.
So I just want to, sorry to interrupt you. I just want to touch on that. So you say try to make it fun, but right,
Yeah.
that is not necessarily an intuitive thing. I know for you and for us, we could, like, it's like if you're positive, you say, all right, now we're going to try to do 10 jumping jacks. Let's see if we can do it. And you put on that. But so not everyone has that personality or that, that ability. It's kind of like when people would want you to be a drill sergeant. You're like, nope, not me. I'm not going to do it. Right. So when you say make it fun, like, can you, I know that it's an esoteric concept, but if you could just maybe just give a couple ideas.
When I get to the different like ideas, we'll get to that. Like, fun. I don't mean it like everybody's smiling and laughing and jumping around. That's a little bit different. What I
Okay.
mean by fun is more that they're engaged and they're
Okay.
happy. They're happy doing what they're
Okay.
doing. I don't
Okay.
mean like necessarily that it's got to be, you're just dancing around and everyone's thrilled. So just like that they don't hate what they're doing.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that's where I'll give you a few
Okay.
ideas of
Good.
things. So goals are important. So now the goals can vary. It could be goals as in like, all right, next week we're all going to do 2 workouts, or it can be, for kids maybe that are more into it. It could be, all right, we're going to shoot for, specific metrics. Like we're going to do X amount of push-ups. One great goal is like a step goal. So like we're going to all, we want to get, X amount of steps. So maybe you do like family walks and you're going to do, 5,000 steps. So goals are good because I think that's something that a lot of kids will latch onto if they have something tangible. Especially when I've worked with kids in fitness, they can be nightmares to work with. But if you give them something like that to work with, it tends to keep them motivated and keep their eye on the ball a little bit. So, and again, like I said, it could vary a lot. It could be again just a matter of like doing 2 workouts a week. Could be like we're doing a amount of push-ups. We're gonna try to, as a family, we're gonna let's say maybe if the family has weight issues, maybe it's like, okay, as a family we're going to try to lose 5 pounds next week. So you can vary up like the different kinds of goals and what you want to work towards, but some kinds of weekly goal or metric can be useful to kind of keeping everybody engaged. So now when it comes to like specific activities, I mean there are tons of activities. So I'm going to go over a few that I think are useful and things that will kind of help keep people engaged. So the simplest thing you could do is like an after dinner walk. Like after you eat, you just everybody family gets together and you just go for a nice long walk. And again, you could set it for a certain amount of steps. It could be you're going to go a certain distance, but that's kind of a simple activity that most people don't do. So first of all, a lot of families don't eat together. So imagine the time you eat together and you all go for a walk as a family. So it's a simple activity, but it'd be surprising how many people don't even get that much, and it's something you're doing as a family. Another thing you do is like so this could be, it's obviously a lot easier outdoors, but it could totally be done indoors, is setting up an obstacle course for the kids.
Okay.
Or for the family. So you use any number of things you have in the house or apartment. Again, the larger the house, larger the yard, the easier it's going to be. But setting up an obstacle course where you've got to jump over things or crawl under things or climb over things. You get to if you're tighter space, maybe you set up a circuit. So each station, like, okay, you got to do 5 burpees at this station, and then you get to this spot and you got to do 5 push-ups, and then you get to another spot and you got to do 20 jumping jacks. So you can kind of set up an obstacle course or a circuit around the house, around the apartment, in the backyard, where everybody, at each spot you have something fun or interesting or different to do. And then again, unlimited exercises to choose from when you're doing something like that. So for younger kids, it might be, jumping jacks, or, younger kids like to do exercises. So you can kind of push them a little bit. And for older kids, you're motivating them with doing real things, real exercises. So you can play around a lot with it depending on who's involved, depending on the family, depending on what you have access to. But like an obstacle course or a circuit is a great little thing to do to keep people exercising. Okay. So again, hikes and biking are really great, but obviously you need weather and location. So if you can get do a family bike ride, it's great, but not everybody has access to that. A family hike again is another great thing. If you have it, but not everyone has access to that. But those are things that you can do that are active. And it's not as you don't have to think too much outside of like the direction you're going. You're just kind of moving. Another cool thing is trying out a different sport. So you might say like, okay, one of our weekly activities is we're going to try out a different sport every week. So it might be like, okay, maybe I've never played baseball, but you know what, I'm going to buy some gloves and some baseball. And obviously this requires space and equipment and money, but like, all right, we're going to try throwing around a baseball, or try go to the batting cage. Next week we're going to toss a football around. We're going to try kicking a ball around. So you can maybe say, okay, we're going to try out a different sport, or and learn different skills or aspects of the sport. And it may not necessarily be that you want to get necessarily really good at it, but even practicing skills from sports, it's great exercise, and it's great for coordination. It could potentially be good for endurance. So that's another activity that again might be more fun than, let's say, doing a traditional workout, because you're trying something new. So that's also another thing that might be useful to do as a family. And again, and a nice thing about that is, let's say you're trying out a sport that you and your kids have never done, you're going to look just as bad as the kids are going to look doing it. So you're all learning together,
much
and
worse.
again, but exactly. So it's a great way to kind of learn together, as a family and as a group. So a couple other things. So now there's, as Justin mentioned earlier, there are a million digital things. So you could try maybe, every week we're going to do a different streaming workout. So it might be, and I mean, you have a billion platforms for it. So some that are paid, some that are not, but it could be, okay, this week we're going to do yoga, and next week we're going to do like a boot camp, and the next week we're going to do a cardio kickboxing class. So you can just take advantage of digital. So if you really don't have access to outdoor stuff, you could do, there are any number of digital things. Another thing is a dance party. So like, this is what I read when I was doing some research on it. Like, I wouldn't do it, but hey, you could do a family dance party.
I think
you
you
might
should,
have a lot of fun doing that.
I think that all our listeners want to see you guys do a dance party.
Yeah.
I think you need
it's
to.
never gonna happen. Yeah. So
For someone who's
so
for someone who's so coordinated like Ryan, he is just not into dancing. Like, it must have, during your wedding, it must have been like,
yeah.
I don't know. I guess you were inspired on another level to do
inspired,
do a dance in front of people.
Yeah. And even that went off the rails. Like, I hired an instructor. I just wanted him to like, look, just help me get through this dance. And then he gave us this crazy coordinated, like insane, like choreographed thing. It was like, I didn't want that. I just wanted like a basic, like, make me not look ridiculous for my first dance. So that was the whole thing in itself. Okay, so a couple other things is so one thing a little more specific is I have a fun card game that I play with kids that I work with. They love this game too. So basically you take a deck of cards. So you have hearts, spades, diamonds, clubs. So you assign an exercise to each card. So let's say push-ups will be hearts, burpees will be diamonds, right? And then whatever for the other ones. So you have your numbers 1 to 10. Then Jack is 15, Queen is 20, King is 25, and Ace is 30. So basically you shuffle the cards and you hand them out. So the kids draw however many cards you want to do. You could hand out all the cards to everybody. You could do 4 cards at a time, but the kids then get to draw the cards, and then whatever the card is, they've got to do it. So if it's an ace of hearts, they've got to do 30 push-ups. And and then depending on how many people are involved, you can have people that trade. So I sometimes will let them trade cards.
That's
so
fun.
Some kid might get 30 burpees, and they'll trade the 30 burpees to somebody else for like whatever, 20 push-ups and 20 sit-ups or something. So that's a really fun game, and kids love it. And even though I could put the hardest exercise, again, I could put burpees and push-ups and like mountain climbers and squat jumps, and they just love the fact that they're playing the game. So any kind of fitness game is really fun, and that one tends to work really well. And it's like endless fun for whatever reason. The kids just love doing it, so they keep wanting to play the card game. And then the other thing you could do is kind of follow the leader. So basically, you would say to your kids, which again is a great way to get them involved. It's like, all right, you get to decide the workout for today, or you get to decide 5 minutes. Like, maybe you say, if there's a family of 5, like everybody gets to decide 5 minutes worth of the exercise for today, so that you're getting everybody involved. Or it could be like round robin. So maybe you do one exercise, then kid does another, and then I do another, and so we just kind of go in a circle. We keep changing the exercises. So there are any number of ways you can do the kind of follow the leader thing, but it's a great way to then get the kids involved, because you're all they're making decisions as well as you. So it's not just you kind of deciding on everything. So with any of this, like, the more interactive you can make it, and again, like, that's what I mean by fun, is like things that are engaging. So the kids, like when I do the the card game, when it comes to the actual exercises, they don't necessarily love the exercises, but they really enjoy the aspect of it that gamifies it. So the more you can kind of gamify exercise for kids, the more fun it can.
Yeah, those last 2 suggestions were great, and the obstacle course. Those sound like really fun, different sort of suggestions that are actually going to get the family engaged, whereas the other ones are going to be helpful and it might be awesome for them. But I feel like those other ones are really something that people are probably going to try.
Exactly. So those are, and then some things you're gonna find work, some things won't. But just keep trying. There's tons of great products as well. Like you can get like kind of similar to what I have. I've found like fitness dice, which are kind of fun. So it's same idea, where you just roll the die and it'll tell you to do whatever the exercise is. So you have like tons of options. And yeah, like definitely, I think those 3 are probably the ones that are most likely to work well with kids anyway. So
how do you feel? How do you feel about blackmail? like, or not, or more like less than blackmail more. How about this? Let's spin it a positive way. Incentives. All right, if you can do an extra 20 burpees today and an extra 50 jumping jacks, you get an extra cookie or something, or something along, or some sort of almost arbitrary incentive
You
that a
definitely
young
don't want to use food
kid.
as a reward.
Okay,
And you
yeah.
definitely don't want people to think that the more they work out, the more they can eat, and
Yeah.
that's a vicious. That's
I'm
not
thinking
good.
more for a very young kid, or some sort of random, or arbitrary. Obviously, yeah. Of course, you never want to do
So
that.
here's
Sorry, I won't mention the food thing, but the like some
Yeah.
sort of arbitrary incentive for that a kid might be go
with
for.
any of it.
Stickers. Stickers work so
Stickers can
good for
work.
kids.
Stickers?
Like that's like,
Okay.
and then like how many days a week did we do our workouts?
Well, a dumb thing that's kind of maybe kind of related to stickers, but even more abstract is I would just say you get like 5 points,
Okay.
and the kids would never understand what I meant by 5
5
points. I never tallied up the points, but I would just say, if you do whatever, you get 10 points. And for whatever reason, they wanted to do it because they wanted the 10 points, even though again, like there was no board, there was no really tally of the points. I didn't ever keep, I didn't keep track of it. They didn't keep track of it, but for whatever reason, just telling them they
Okay.
get points.
It's an interesting
But
concept.
but no, so to answer that, so I think and I'm not an expert, I'm not a child psychologist, so I'm limited, fairly limited in how I can answer. But I would just say I would be careful about the so you would want it to be like a bonus.
Okay.
So like let's say for screen time, like okay, so let's say so let's say you manage your kid's screen time. So like they they get an hour of screen time a day, or they get 2 hours a day. Now what I would do is this: you separate the screen time is its own thing, the workouts are their own thing. So you don't want to make it so that you have to exercise for screen time. I
So
think
that's a
not
blackmail
good
is a bad thing.
because that's blackmail. They're gonna look at the exercise as a negative because I only have to I have to do that for screen. Because what they're really looking at is you're taking away screen time if they don't exercise.
yes.
So there could be a negative correlation there. What I would say is you might say it for a bonus. So maybe the workout's one thing, screen time's another thing. It's its own thing. You might say, all right, if we do an extra circuit, let's say an extra round of a circuit, I'll give you 30 minutes extra of screen time. So in that way, it's a bonus. They haven't lost anything because they always have their hour of screen time, and they've done their exercise. So those two are separate. They're not mutually exclusive. You don't need one or the they're not connected in any way. But then you might say, all right, if you guys can give me 10 more burpees and you get 15 minutes extra screen time, then I can see how that works, because they're already into it, they're already excited, they're already having fun, and you just gave them a bonus for doing a couple extra burpees. Like that's different than if you're like, you only get screen time if you exercise. So that's the way I'd say, if it's a reward that's independent of either thing, that's fine. But I just wouldn't be like, you know what, you can't have your cheeseburger unless you do your stuff, because then that's going to be,
please,
I think
never,
that's problematic.
never
that
do
creates
that.
a negative association.
Yeah, that would be terrible.
All right. So is that any other questions or thoughts to add? If you guys, no. All right, so let's get to, we got a in lieu of a Ask the Trainer, we did get some feedback from when we discussed a while back. We talked about some of the diet programs, including Weight Watchers and Noom. So this comes from Chris, and Chris says, "Hi there. I enjoy listening to Tips with Tony, and heard the recent one where you spoke on Weight Watchers and Noom. I wanted to let you know that I totally agree with what you said as far as Weight Watchers from other people that have been on it, though I have not. But as someone who has done Noom and with my husband, and I'm currently doing it, I feel like it's in its own class as far as weight loss programs. I have tried many things, and Noom has definitely been a life changer as far as behavior modification. When you first start, they tell you that they don't want you on it forever, and they give you a target date, and they talk to you throughout the program about maintenance and what you can do to transition from tracking your food all the time. It gives you the tools. Excuse me. It gives you the tools that you can then use for the rest of your life. My husband has lost 55 pounds and I've lost 17. Also, it was mentioned on the podcast that they discouraged avocados and peanut butter, etc. They don't. They just put it in a class of you need to watch your amount of that because they're calorie dense. Their color codes are a little different than what was spoken of on the podcast. Green meaning the least calorie dense, yellow moderately calorically dense, and red is high caloric density. They teach you not to look at food as good and bad, but how limiting you should make it. It tries to change people's binge and diet cycles by not feeling guilty. I've recommended Noom to so many people because it has been a lifestyle changer for both me and my husband. I've struggled with food issues for most of my life, and I'm finally seeing some progress thanks to Noom. Yes, you do track your food on the program so you can analyze what you're eating and make better choices. But the object of their business is to always send you off on your own with the tools you need for life. You have daily articles to read on so many topics like sleep, self-image, stress management, exercise, etc., etc. Tony mentioned that she hasn't done Noom, so I just wanted to clarify some of the misconceptions that were spoken of on the podcast. Thanks for your time. Thanks for the time you all spend in promoting health and fitness, Chris.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. So was anything? So I'm thinking, does that contradict anything that we did talk about on the podcast?
I remember. I said I don't know Noom specifically. I just know people who've
Yeah.
applied to my program and who work with me
Yeah.
one-on-one who've mentioned that they have done Noom before, and that they set their calories relatively low. And
Yeah.
I've had people come to me and just say that it was slightly confusing. So it seems like she used the program in the way that probably it's intended. The problem with
Yeah.
group programs is that it's open to interpretation. So it's very
Yeah.
different than if you're working with someone one-on-one and you can really get to the root cause. I'm not sure how deep-rooted her issues go, but from my experience working with people, they have really, really like a very unhealthy relationship with food. They struggle with a lot of like anxiety and depression and binging, and it just, to me, I just don't feel like it's a universal approach for most people out there. But like anything, there is, like I also said, there are Weight Watchers has helped so many people too. It's just
Yeah.
really up to the individual. So I like that it does. Like I said, I haven't really looked into it in great detail. So when we were talking about it, it kind of caught me off guard. But the point being is that like it, you have to look at things as a grain of salt, and yes, and then if you're not going to be doing it for a lifetime, then you really need to make sure that you have those habits in place before moving forward. But I think that's awesome if
Yeah.
it's working for her. Like anything, I'm
Yeah.
never going to put down something that's going to help someone more. And that's one thing I say a lot: if it's helping you more than stressing you, keep going. But I find with a lot of those programs, it usually gets to this place of stress more than being helpful. But she seems like someone who's benefiting from it, so I think that's really great.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, think with any diet or any program, there is a level of, one size fits all to any of it. And so some people are going to benefit greatly from almost anything, even the ones that we really speak poorly about. Uh, but then there are some people who really require a very tailored approach. And so I think that some people are a little bit, I think some of it requires to be a little more self-motivated and, able to kind of grab the bull by the horns and own it. And for some, you need some more guidance. You need somebody to really, guide you along the way. So I think with all of it, and I think we're all pretty much on the same page. It's like, you kind of case by case. But there are some people that require a little bit more handholding to kind of get through some of the issues. And yeah, as you mentioned, I think the more deep rooted the kind of emotional component of it is, the more likely that they really need somebody there to kind of make changes and tailor it to them, because some of the programs are they're meant for volume, and they're not necessarily meant for individuals. Which is where, like what you offer is so valuable, because people that maybe can't have a hard time benefiting from something that Weight Watchers or Noom will then have somebody that can really speak to them and work specifically with them.
So, an interesting thing that's often used in advertising these, and first off, Chris, congratulations on having this work for you. That's great to hear that it is, and I hope that it continues to do so, and that you reach sort of the the health and diet and fitness levels that you want to. An interesting thing in the advertising that usually oftentimes it starts with, well, I looked at the scale and this is the, and I weighed a lot. I looked in the mirror and I said, something has to change. Right. So I tried this and it worked. Right. You hear that quite a bit, and sort of your sort of almost sleeping on the fact that this person says, I'm now willing to make a change. So oftentimes it's I'm not going to say it's almost not as much what the program is, but the willingness of the person to stick with something. And that's kind of what you guys said with the individual. And yes, if there might be a perfect marriage where for Chris and her husband that actually I don't know, is just to be sure, is Chris a female or male? Do we know? Just in case. I don't want to misquote. So
I
just
made the assumption that Chris is
okay.
female,
Just as a disclaimer, I'm sorry if just if we incorrectly assumed that, but that Chris and her or his husband is
look at you being woke. Just
look, I'm just
no,
you know how it
no,
is
I
nowadays. So
no,
I just want to be inclusive and fair to everyone.
Yeah.
That the willingness and perhaps that the marriage with Noom, that Noom for whatever fit their goals, fit their strategy, fit what it wanted to, and for whatever reason, or spoke to them in a certain way, combined with their willingness to do it, and perhaps it worked out that way. But just though I don't want to sleep on the willingness of the person.
Well, you have to actually do it. You have to like work the program.
Yes.
You have to do it. So like that's
Yes.
the difference with working with someone one-on-one. It's kind of like with a personal trainer, right? Like you could have, and there are some really great like workout programs out there that if you show up and you do it and you're self-motivated, of course they're going to be effective, and that's awesome. But if you're not really engaged and there's no one kind of keeping you accountable and keeping you engaged, then it's probably going to falter a little bit. But I think I think that's wonderful. If it's helping, that's great. And thank you for that clarity. Like I said, I haven't really looked into it. I was just some things that I've heard from other people. So maybe I should look into it a little bit more.
That's my dog.
Oh, the dog.
Well,
how's your doggy doing?
I guess that good. Okay, she's still crazy, but she's makes progress.
Nice.
Every day she makes a little progress, but she's still out of her mind, crazy. Thanks for asking.
Of course.
But I guess that's it. We'll try to be back next week. I think we're all kind of in a normal schedule now, so hopefully we get a few weeks in a row where we can record. But as usual, our stuff is on all of social media, Instagram, Facebook. Like us, subscribe if you haven't yet. Leave a review; those always help. On Apple Podcasts. But I'm Ryan George.
I'm Justin Guild, aka Chef Sonic, reminding you that truth does not sell, but apparently Noom.
This is not sponsored. This is not sponsored, by the way.
Anything that right now, things that rhyme with are doing real well.
And I'm Tony Marinucci. Oh God, now you screw me up, Justin. I am Tony Marinucci, aka Tip Soup Tony, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time.
And we are the GymWits.